Welcome, Luminauts, to our very first episode of Montessori Meetup. My name is Rachel Ossie. I am the Chief Development Officer of Lumin Education, and I will also be serving as the host of this podcast. I'm going to start off our very first episode by telling you a bit about Lumin Education and why we're launching this podcast, Montessori Meetup. Lumin Education is based here in Dallas, Texas. We've been providing high-quality Montessori education to the youngest children and their families since 1978. At Lumin, we believe that starting young and involving parents is the best way to set children up for future success. We offer classroom programs for children between the ages of 18 months and third grade, and home visiting and parent education programs that work primarily with families who have children under the age of 3. After more than 45 years of working with children and families, we've decided to work towards educating parents and caregivers of young children in an even larger way by going digital. This podcast will cover some of the issues that we routinely see as educators, and we encourage your feedback as well. We'd like to know the kinds of things that you'd like to know, the challenges that you may be having in parenting or in your work as an educator, and we want to help. In our episodes of Montessori Meetup, we'll be talking both with experts from the Lumin staff and with some of our partners who work extensively with young children. And we're excited to get started. But before we can get to the nitty-gritty, we first wanted to take some time to introduce you all to Lumin's philosophy and history. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Terry Ford, who is Lumin's co-founder and our Mrs. Oreen Levy-Wolf Executive Director. So welcome, Terry.
Great to be here, Rachel. I'm excited.
Yay. Terry, you started Lumin, which was then known as East Dallas Community School, in 1978. And what were some of the issues that you were dealing with that led you to decide to start your own school?
You know, East Dallas at that time had a lot of serious issues. And actually, one of the most serious was tenant problems, tenant evictions that were being conducted illegally by shotgun. Sometimes the landlord would take the front door and the back door off the house in the dead of winter.
Oh, gosh.
And I was living in the neighborhood as a first grade teacher in walking distance of the school, and came home one day to find a notice tacked to my door that said, "You have 3 days to get out. You are evicted."
Wow.
I was being, you can imagine.
Yeah.
I was being evicted for having children of color visit me at my duplex. So I turned to this group that had formed, some neighborhood residents had gotten together as a community organizing group, talking to different neighbors. And they held, it was called the Bodog Patriots, and they held a tenants workshop each week. So I learned that as a tenant, I really didn't have much rights.
Wow.
But that they could help me get 30 days instead of 3 days to find a new place to live. So I started volunteering for the Bodog Patriots and learned about other issues in the neighborhood, things like elderly homeowners on fixed incomes, not being able to, really being terrified of code enforcement that might take away their home. And as a teacher, I heard oftentimes from parents who were so concerned that their kids, as they were moving into upper grades, were falling behind academically and were getting discouraged, not wanting to come to school, sometimes getting in trouble. So the more that we talked, the more that we started discussing ways that they could help their kids at home. They approached not only me, but also another neighborhood teacher, John Fullenwider, and that evolved into conversations around, let's do a volunteer summer program, and that evolved into a school.
Wow. So right from the very beginning, this was a really parent-led effort.
We could not have done it without the parents. The parents, we had donated space. We had 3 donations totaling $1,750.
Wow.
And we had 1 staff person. I was the teacher, the school director, the custodian, you name it. And the parents were really the ones who came through. They They went to a junkyard and were able to get frames that they built into tables and
gosh.
found donated books in an old dumpster outside of a elementary school. So from the beginning, it was parent involvement that really made this happen.
Wow. And for those of you who are watching this episode on video, we do have a couple of photos of some early classroom scenes and parents getting involved from the very beginning. So you'll be able to enjoy that if you're watching us on YouTube. So we're called Montessori Meetup, obviously. And you now know that Lumin is a Montessori program. All of our home visiting and classroom programs are based in the Montessori philosophy, which we talk about in a later episode. Were you a Montessori teacher when you started Lumin?
Far from it. I was really in Montessori a complete novice. I fell in love with Montessori when I was in college, and a professor suggested that I go observe a classroom. And what I realized at the time was not only that I was so excited and motivated by this new approach with children, but also that at that point, the only place that it was available was in private schools and accessible to families who could afford to pay tuition. So I read every book I could get my hands on and tried to implement the philosophy in my first grade classroom without training. And so no, when we started Lumin, I did not have any Montessori training as a teacher.
And so what was it about the Montessori method that really made you decide that this was the right way forward for the program that you wanted to begin?
Dr. Montessori figured out that from the time a baby is born, they are just every instinct. They're all about exploring and learning about the world around them. So when that baby is throwing something, they're trying to figure out, does it splat? Does it shatter? Does it bounce? And so that attitude or that instinct really to learn and explore is what we as parents and we as teachers are really responsible for nurturing. It's all about creating an environment at home and at school that supports that instinct to explore and to learn. So what I love about Montessori is, one, the beautiful teaching equipment that just calls to the children. And Montessori is this system that's just set up so beautifully to do that. And so the Montessori equipment, the multi-age classrooms where the older kids have now become the leaders in the class and they're helping the younger kids. I think my favorite part of Montessori is that it's all based on initiative. It's all about the child. They don't come into the classroom and sit down and wait to be told what to do. They come into the class thinking, all right, I got a lesson on that yesterday. I'm going to jump into that activity first thing off the bat. So it's that excitement about learning that's part of, it's just built into the way Montessori works that really stays with kids for the rest of their lives.
And it does seem appropriate that for an organization that was founded truly by a group of community organizers trying to make the world a better place for their families, that seems like just the perfect fit, right?
Taking initiative, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so we've talked a bit about the roots of Lumin's classroom programs, but a big part of the current work is in parent education and home visiting. And that's something that I think people are a little bit less familiar with. I mean, everyone's been in a classroom. Not everyone knows what a home visitor does. In fact, the entire Montessori Meetup series is based in an effort to really inform parents and provide helpful resources for them in their parenting journeys. So how did you identify parent education and family services as such a critical part of Lumin's work?
Back in 1978, when we first started, we started with 3-year-olds. And when those kids came into the classroom, what we noticed was there were some kids who were like curious and engaged and comfortable getting along with other kids. And there were other children, maybe who'd been in a child care center where they watched TV all day long, or who'd developed bad habits about how you get what you want, who really needed to unlearn some of the patterns that they'd fallen into. So in the early 1990s, we started our Pregnancy to Age 3 program. We'd always been like all about start young, involve parents. But now we could start when parents were pregnant. And that was just the best thing, to be able to match up a parent coach with each family individually so that they could go to that family's home and listen to what that family was noticing about their child, what they were interested in, what they were concerned about, and then share child development information in whatever way worked best for that family. So the Pregnancy to Age 3 program is now the foundation of everything that we do. And those home visits are such a perfect way to begin your adventure as a parent. We also have toddler classes that are part of Pregnancy to Age 3 that start at 18 months and go through 3 years.
So Lumin has been working in education now for almost half a century. An amazing sentence.
Really? Wow.
What do you think has changed, if anything, about the need for high quality early education during that time?
We have such a long way to go in terms of providing quality education and experiences and care for our young children. What has changed over the past few years is that policymakers now have a better understanding of what a powerful investment it is to support children at the preschool level. So we have 3 and 4-year-olds now. If their family has limited financial means, then they may have the opportunity to go to a public preschool. What's really hasn't changed is that there's this huge unmet need in terms of childcare, education, parent support systems, and that need is the greatest with infants and toddlers. So that potential, we have this potential to really invest at an age when it makes the greatest difference, and when really the key to making a difference is family engagement. It's all about families engaging with their children, parents partnering with educators to really see a child meet their full potential.
And it seems too that 0 to 3 age range is probably when parents need the most support, right?
I know I did.
That's a difficult time to be a parent. Well, a tiring time to be a parent. We'll say that. So, and I've heard from people as well that since the COVID-19 pandemic, you feel like some of those support systems have weakened over that period, or people have been very isolated and feel like they're kind of going it on their own. So I would imagine that there is a lot of need for parents of very young children who are already somewhat isolated just by the nature of having an infant or a toddler. And then the past few years have been a tough time.
Being connected with someone you trust
right.
just means the world when you're at this first step of this great adventure as parents.
Right. So as we get started with Montessori Meetup, and as the founder, co-founder, and executive director of Lumin, what are your personal goals for this podcast?
Rachel, what I would love would be that Montessori Meetup helps parents relax. Relax and
that's a tall order.
Really. But to relax and to enjoy being parents. I love the idea of Montessori Meetups providing resources for parents and really helping them feel like, okay, I've got some ways to approach this and take this journey one step at a time.
I think that's very valuable. We should put that in the show notes.
Well, and Lumin over the years has accumulated so much expertise. We've got so many wonderful educators. To be able to share that with more people is huge.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Hopefully, that's where we'll go. So finally, if you could sum up a piece of advice for parents or educators who are watching today's program, in the light of the years of experience that you have doing this work, what would that be?
Ooh, I get to give advice.
You get to give advice. That's what we're all about.
You know, I actually want to start with a recommendation. I brought this book that is my favorite book for parents. It's so simple and useful and practical. And it's called What Parents Need to Know About Children by Stan Ferguson.
Okay.
I would recommend this book to parents from infancy through the elementary school years. So this was one of my guides.
And what specifically do you think is a really great takeaway from this book, or sort of the goal of it for parents to look into?
It's so simple but not easy. In a way, it describes what parents can do, and it has a summary at the end of each chapter that says, all right, so here are the key points. Here's how you can put this into action. So I would say, well, let me switch now to my pieces of advice.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I've got more than one. Are
Great.
you ready?
Yes, very ready.
Okay. One is, I say to parents, make sure that your child knows that your love is unconditional. No matter what grade they get on their report card, no matter what mistakes they make or they say or do, let them know that you are there for them through thick and thin. So that's number one. That's the basics.
That's a great piece of advice.
Two, I would say, notice what your child is interested in and competent at, as opposed to praising them. So what I mean by that is, you put all the blocks away in the box. Or, look at you, you put on your socks all by yourself. Or, oh, you are really interested in that grasshopper. So the power of noticing is really that it focuses on the child's interests and the child's choices that they're making, rather than doing something because it makes you happy. So that's advice number two. And finally, you heard me say this before, finally I would say, relax. You are going to make mistakes as a parent. You know what we tell kids, you've heard me say this before, at Lumin, is when you make a mistake, that's because you're doing challenging work. Now, we know parenting is challenging work.
Very challenging
So you're going to make mistakes. Just give yourself a break, relax, and know that you're going to do fine, just taking one step at a time on this adventure of being a parent.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to kick things off here.
All right. Well, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Terry. We
I enjoyed
appreciate the time that you took out of your day. Your advice is phenomenal, and I hope everyone takes it.
All right, let's do it.
I also want to encourage any of our listeners to think about the issues and questions that you have for us. What would you like to see us cover as part of Montessori Meetup? Alternatively, what do you definitely not want us to talk about? We'll listen to that too. If you have feedback or an idea for a future episode, you can contact us at media@lumineducation.org or submit a contact form on our website at www.lumineducation.org. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.